Hello, everyone. Welcome. It is the Archer Football Podcast. I am Dana OG. Joining me this week from the regular crew is Lisa and Kate, but we have our very special guest, Emory Hunt, here with us. I'm so excited. I have been looking forward to this show for a while. First of all, I'm really excited because I actually get to go to the draft this year, and it'll be my first draft, and I'm pretty excited about that. That'll be really fun. But also, I'm excited because I'm trying very hard over the last year or two to pay more attention to college football, to learn more about college football. Because let me tell you, I was like, I cannot relearn these people every 2 years. Like, I can't. It's too many people, too many schools. I couldn't do it. But now I'm having kind of more fun. And I have actually Kate and Lisa and Sonia to thank for that because they have gotten me more into college football. So joining us, like I said, is our friend, the Czar of the Playbook. You can find him everywhere now. Emery, you are everywhere now, and I absolutely love it. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, I appreciate you guys always having me on. It's always fun to come and talk draft with you all.
Yeah, this is exciting time. It's exciting for me because Seattle actually has picks this year, and I'm not quite sure what to do with that. I'm a little bizarre, but yeah, we're not the Chiefs, who we are going to talk about the Chiefs and their 12 picks that they have. But we are going to get into this now. I want to keep this pretty general. This year, to me, seems a little different than most years, Emery. There seems to be a mix of players that really could go first overall or even in the top 5. Like when you look at mock drafts, there doesn't seem to be a lot of consistency over who they think is going to go first. That's not normal during the draft. Isn't that right?
No, not normal. And I think the biggest reason why is because you are essentially dealing with the largest draft class since about World War II.
Oh, really? I guess I didn't know. Oh, sure. Okay. Yeah.
When folks went back, went to war, you had what, 1943, 44, 45, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So when they came back from the war, you had these super, older players out there playing college football. Same thing we've gone through the last 2 years with the NCAA granting guys that extra year, that free year, so to speak, from COVID. So now you have your regular seniors, your fifth-year seniors, and your 6-year super seniors. They got that extra year. So, you think about, I put out a draft guide this year that has over 1,000 individual scouting reports. Last year, I had about 540. So that shows you how many people went back to school. And so you're essentially dealing with 2 draft classes, because the first one I did in 2020 had about 650. So 650, 500, 1,000. So that tells you how many players are in this class. So I can understand why you see such when you have options, you don't have consistency. You can't have a consensus. So that's probably why we're seeing what we're seeing right now.
I find it interesting too, and this is something I know Lisa's going to talk to you about, is the fact that we don't, and we're going to talk about these quarterbacks individually a little bit, but that we don't have the quarterback, right? We don't have a Trevor Lawrence this year. We don't have, the one guy that is going to come in and definitely go, first overall. I find that fascinating because I think it is going to put some focus on different positions. We get caught up. Lisa gets caught up in quarterbacks during the draft, but I think that it's really showcasing some of the other positions. If you had to look at what we have this year, which positions do you really feel like are going to be the ones that everyone is going after?
I feel like just because of how the nature of college football is, it's going to be wide receiver and cornerback. We're seeing teams in college throw the football 65, 70% of the time. They're using more 3, 4, 5 wide receiver sets. On defense, you have more nickel defense. You have, more safeties that can cover. And it goes all the way back to high school where you're seeing the advent of 7-on-7. So you see a lot of guys coming out of college that have a ton of reps in terms of running routes and defending routes. So the development and progression of that talent at the collegiate level is just going to expedite, and you're going to show itself more so at the NFL level when it's time to make selections and make picks. So you're going to see more and more receivers and DBs. If you think back, we all are experienced enough to go back in time and think back to when running backs and linebackers ruled the early parts of the draft because
Oh,
more
yeah.
college football used to be three yards in a cloud of dust, and so now we're airing it out. And so that's the difference. And that's why we see what we see. And that's why you have such a wealth of talent at receiver and in the secondary, because now your safeties also have to be able to cover too.
For sure. So Lisa said that she wanted to talk with you about this, but I want to start off. It'll be you and Lisa's conversation because this is her wheelhouse. This is what she loves. But this year, the quarterbacks to me, and to everyone, aren't super exciting. Everyone kept saying that this is, kind of a poor quarterback draft. And yet there's usually in those type of drafts, like one or two that end up breaking the mold or coming out much better than people expect them to. Lisa, I know you have looked at these quarterbacks and I know that you aren't overwhelmed by them. But if I want to get your opinion, I want to get Emery's opinion on which of these quarterbacks you think is most NFL ready and which ones that you think will kind of break this not great quarterback title that they've kind of given them this year.
Well, when you go into this quarterback class and you look and the top name that you're hearing, of course, is Malik Willis and Kenny Pickett. I think as far as who's ready to start, they're 2-year starters. So I honestly think that if you're going to look to say who would have the more experience, I always look at Kenny Pickett, always look at Malik Willis. Because it definitely has the stronger arm. Malik does definitely showcase that to Emery and I at the combine. So I think when you look at this quarterback class, the name that I'm going to throw out there is Carson Strong. I kind of just like this kid. I kind of watch him. He's a little green. I think he's going to come in. I think that he can make some noise in a later round. My thing is right now is the way this quarterback draft is going is one day, you see Malik and I'm sure Emery saw the same thing I saw. I saw the Steelers, Mike Tomlin really looking at Malik. I saw him talking to the coaches. I saw him, so the kid definitely got, looked at. To what I'd like to know with Emery is I just don't know which one's going to go first. I'm hearing, Malik's name. I'm hearing Kenny Pickett's name. I'm hearing Desmond Ryder all of a sudden is coming up. As far as when you look at some of these guys that are going to come up in order. The first quarterback that I can honestly see coming off the board to me would be Kenny Pickett to the Panthers. That's, I just don't think Malik fits the Panthers mold. I think Kenny Pickett fills that mold. And then again, you can look at Washington. I think Malik would be a good choice for Washington to come up and get him. But honestly, Emery, I'd like to get your thing. Do you think we'll even see a quarterback come out in the first round? Or you think people will wait and go for the wide receivers, the cornerbacks, the safeties? And, you got some stout O linemen that'll be available. And all these quarterbacks are going to be available in the second round. No doubt.
I think we'll see, two guys selected in the first round. And just to unpack a lot of what you said, earlier in the process, if full disclosure, Malik Willis would be the only quarterback that I would trust taking in the first round. I've said that since July, right? Because he has all of the upside traits that you look for. He runs 4.4. He's a more explosive version of Jalen Hurts, who I had as my QB2 behind behind Joe Burrow. So even in that class, I took a lot of flack for having Jalen Hurts number 2, but looks like he was the second best quarterback in that class. So then you look at someone that has a more explosive version of that with upside. That's the one you kind of want to take the gamble on. But even then, my grade is it's an 80, which is like the low end first. And so earlier in July, I was like, well, the best possible spot for him is Detroit, because they have 2 first round picks. They could take him pick 32. He doesn't have to start. He can sit behind Goff for that 1 year before they can get rid of Goff's contract. And then, you have your guy with that coaching staff, with that offensive line, with that run game that they already have in place. They'll be excellent for him. And, fast forward now throughout the season, everyone starts to realize that Malik Willis can play. So if you're Detroit, you're like, well, damn, we can't wait until pick 32 now. So you kind of force your hand. You might have to take him at number 2, and stash him for a year, which is possible. And I wouldn't be upset with that because they'll have a plan in place. The other quarterback A lot of people think, the Panthers would be it's a glaring need for the Panthers, right? But do we really trust?
I agree.
Yeah, do we really trust Carolina? This is the same team that told us that Sam Darnold was better than Teddy Bridgewater.
They're going to trade for Baker Mayfield. They're going to take Baker.
When no one else wanted Baker Mayfield, they also threw Sam Darnold under the bus. They threw Cam Newton under the bus. Do we really trust this particular staff to work with the quarterback? No. So I don't think putting a Malik Willis there or anybody there would be beneficial for them. I think they do go the veteran route or the Baker Mayfield route or the Jimmy Garoppolo route, right? And the second quarterback that I feel like would be off the board would be Desmond Ridder going to Pittsburgh, because when you look at his makeup, he's played a lot of games. He started a lot of games. He led his team to the playoffs. He led his team to conference championships. He has the mobility that they were coveting from that position. That they let it be known that we want somebody that can move. And I feel like that's the guy that can step in right away and play. He's already better than Trubisky. He's already better than Mason Rudolph. He's played a lot. He's seen a lot. He has the right temperament for the position. And, he's a mature guy. He's married, has a daughter. So he's ready to step in right now and go. And I think that's more fitting for Pittsburgh than anything. And I feel like everyone else is just kind of thrown in the mix because they want to pump up the class. But Pickett is someone that has played 5-6 years, so he's going to be just as old as some of your guys that have been in the league. He really had this one breakout year. I've seen a lot of Pickett live. I've seen him twice out in North Carolina when they played North Carolina on those Thursday night games. I've been out there twice, and it's kind of like, okay, he can play, but it's not like someone you take in the first round. To me, he's more of an upgrade of what a lot of teams have at QB2. And if, I feel like this entire draft is what that shapes up to be. And we've seen the last 2 years, you better have a backup quarterback that can play. And I think a lot of these guys, we may not see the star power to take guys in the first round that could be frontline starters, but we for sure can take guys that can be better than what the Giants rolled out there at their QB2 and QB3 spots last year when Daniel Jones got hurt. So I feel like here's a great chance to get better at your reserve quarterback, because at some point in time, that guy is going to have to play, especially now with a 17-game season. So I said a long-winded way of saying I would only take Willis and perhaps Ridder in round one.
Okay. I think I got Ridder going to the Saints. I got the Saints looking at him.
Interesting.
So,
That is interesting. There's a lot that's been said about this wide receiver class. And Kate, I'm going to throw this one to you just a little bit about how there are some elite level wide receivers. I feel like we hear that every single year. And maybe that's just because there's a lot of wide receivers coming out. What I find interesting is we're going to get these high level wide receivers. And then next year seems to be the year for the really good quarterbacks from what I've been reading and what I've been hearing. There are some teams out there, Kate, that are really wide receiver needy. Now, looking at you, Green Bay Packers. That's all I'm saying. I've been thinking that the wide receivers that group is really going to take over this draft and end up being the stars of the draft. If you look at all of these teams that are in this front round, in the first round, and it's not every team, as we well know, because there's lots of teams that don't have picks in this one. I think that I read, Emery, you'll probably know this. I read that there are more teams with multiple first-round picks this year than any other year before. I think it's like 7 teams or some ridiculous number. Anyway, Kate, when you look at these wide receivers and you look at these wide receiver needy teams, how quickly do you think they're going to go like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7? Like, are they just going to roll off? Or, as Lisa mentioned, these offensive tackles and defensive ends that people are talking about, do you think that they'll be a little bit more heavy on that end? I don't know. I just keep hearing about wide receivers over and over and over again.
So looking at the teams that are picking, and my Browns are one of those teams that doesn't have a first round pick. Thank you very much. I feel like the wide receivers are going to go like they would in a fantasy draft. Once the first 2 go, everybody's going to start grabbing one.
That's what I thought.
Because there's like this cluster of, in my mind, 7 or 8, and then there's a step before the next group of wide receivers. So I feel like there'll be a run on them. But there are also a lot of teams in the top that need a safety, that need an edge rusher. and they're that need somebody on the offensive line. There are some good non-skill positions, which is just not quarterback, wide receiver, running back. Those teams need those players up top. So unless they start getting trade crazy, where people want to move up, probably the New York Giants pick twice, and they pick early. They pick where's my list? They pick fifth and seventh.
5 and 7.
Yeah, I think they're going wide receiver with that 7 pick, and I think that's where the insanity starts, at least from what I'm looking at. And I'm sad that we got, because I wasn't sure if there'd be anybody left for me at 13, which is now Houston's problem. But I got Wilson and Olave coming out in my Buckeyes. I got to tell you, I don't know if I told you girls, the funniest thing that happened to me at the combine is, and Emery, you know what it's like. You're in that room where the prospects are all lined up to do their interviews, and there's all these people from the media waiting to talk to them. And there's this guy walking from podium to podium, and he's talking in a microphone, and he's saying podium 1 and the name of the person there, and then the next one, the name of the person. And he gets up to Chris Olave's, and he's like, Chris Olave, wide receiver, and he moves on, and a couple people snicker, and I wasn't thinking about it, and Lisa and Dane, I'll tell you how I am. And I'm looking at my phone, and without thinking, I said, tell me you don't watch college football without telling me you don't watch college football. And everyone around me just started cracking up. Like, how do you not know his name? He's going to be one of the first wide receivers to go. I mean, there's a very good class, but I don't know if you agree with me or not, Emery. I feel like there's 7, maybe 8. And then there's like this huge gap before the next, what I call the next cluster of receivers.
No, it's what's funny. I'm laughing because, you saw where we were set up on the stage, right?
Yeah.
And there was I'm not gonna name the outlet or the name, but there was like a car wash. They were bringing prospects through this cycle, and we, once this outlet got done with the player, then we got the player, and vice versa, right? Whoever got the player first, then they move them on to the next one. So this particular person was interviewing a receiver, and he said, he pronounced his last. I forgot how he butchered his last name, but it was like he said, and the guy Cardi said, "Oh, it's Mechie," and I'm like, man, so have you never heard John Mechie before? Like that's not like that's a common college football name. You talk draft all day long, and you've never heard John Mechie from Alabama. You've never heard that. I was like I was blown away. But to your point, there is a nice crop, and also about runs on position. That's gonna go with any position, because
that does happen.
So people may want to, whoever takes the first tackle, then we see a run on tackles. Edge rusher, you run on edge rusher, and receiver. To your point, because like you said, there's about 7, but I feel like people now, the teams have to. I think this particular draft, those that have multiple picks are have golden tickets, because like I said earlier, this is the deepest draft we had in about 80 years. So it's advantageous for you to have multiple swings at bat. So we might not see a lot of movement going up. We may see 1 or 2 moves here and there, but I feel like we'll see teams just stay pat and and try to just knock out a bunch of picks, because unless you have let's say if you have one of these double-digit picks and you can move up a spot or down a spot and sacrifice 1 pick, I could see someone doing that. But I feel like with the way teams are now targeting wide receivers and specific traits, we won't see them swing for the fences and go for the one guy, the anomaly, right? Because there's 12 anomalies in the way the draft is set up.
Well, and I'm looking at the draft order, and it's not like in prior years, at least for me, it seems like you'll have somebody picking in the top 10 and then they made a move and they get a pick again, like in the 20s, late teens. They're picking, like I said, the Giants have 5 and 7. The Eagles are 15 and 18. The Saints are 16 and 19. Like their multiple picks are fairly close together. So moving up 1 spot, like you're already 2 spots away from your first pick. You know what I mean? So you're picking real close together. It's not like you're going to lose 10 people in between. And a lot of them are stepped pretty close together for them to be doing almost a back-to-back kind of thing on this.
And some people always, I was on a show where a guy said, well, if you're the Giants, then you got pick 5, and then maybe you can move pick 7. I was like, listen, I don't care.
For the Giants, you need to take both.
You got 2 swings at bat in the top 10 of the entire draft.
It's amazing.
In any draft, I'm taking 2 top 10 players. Like, I'm never moving out the top 10. Why would you do that? That makes no sense.
Well, especially when you can take a player at 1 and 4 and then trade the 1 away and then give the 4 big money. I know teams do that kind of thing.
Kate's still a little better about
Denzel
that.
got paid this week. I throw my Buckeye love out there. Denzel got paid this week.
Just a little bit.
All right.
But that is a really good point, though, because you hear a lot about. Okay, so we talk about the Chiefs, and the Kansas City Chiefs have 12 picks, and which is the rich get richer, right? Like they already is such a good team, but theirs are back-to-back picks at 29 and 30. So I've heard a lot of talk about if they really like someone, they might gather those 2 together to move up. But other than that, from what I've heard, most people agree with you, Emery, that they don't expect a lot of moving until the later rounds, that they think that there'll be some movement in the later rounds because that's where the bulk of those are. If there was a team that had multiple picks in the first round that would move up for someone, who do you think that would be? Because see, I feel like though there is, like you said, you have all the swings, but there are some guys that really might fit a team better. And if you can get them, I could see maybe if the Saints had someone on their, eyes, in their head that they really wanted, that they would move up. But other than Kansas City, that's really who I've been hearing that might move around a little bit. Is there any other team that you think might?
The Saints make sense for one reason. If they sign a Jarvis Landry.
Yeah.
And the reason why they made the move to get that additional first round pick, there's a glaring hole at left tackle. There's no left tackle right now. Teron Armstead has moved on to the Dolphins, I believe. And so you're in a class now where you have 3 elite tackle prospects in Ekwonu Neal and Charles Cross. So getting to pick 16 was huge for New Orleans. And you're banking on teams going DN crazy, corner crazy, receiver crazy, that pushes down tackles. But if they see a situation where, or they get intel where that there may be a situation where the tackle that they want, I think is probably Charles Cross, is not there, then they got to package those 2 first-round picks to get up a few spots to get Charles Cross. So I think that's the when you look at the Saints roster, it's offensive tackle, speed at wide receiver. They lack both. And so if they stay at 16 and 19, they're getting a tackle and a receiver. But if they sign Jarvis Landry, it gives them a little bit more wiggle room to try to package up to get that tackle.
For sure. I have seen Cross mocked to Seattle many times. And let me just tell you, Seahawks fans would be thrilled about that. Just letting you know, we would happily take that.
See, I see him going to the Giants with one of their early picks, either 5 or 7.
It'd be interesting.
They need to protect their quarterback in New York.
Right.
They need a quarterback in New York. I wouldn't be surprised if they would be the one, if Malik Willis doesn't go to Detroit, to fall right there and surprise. That's the one thing no one's talking about. They're not talking about that scenario where Houston or the Giants would take a quarterback if the Lions don't take one at 2. Because it's definitely plausible if you're Houston and the Giants. You think about Dabo coming from Buffalo, Josh Allen type experiment. Malik Willis fits that Josh Allen type experiment. You have a walking turnover right now at quarterback. It makes so much sense to get better there. But we'll see. There's a lot of scenarios where it could cause that is going undiscussed that could be in play for once we get to. Do
you think the Texans would take one at 3, or would they kind of roll the dice and see what was there at 13?
Yeah, I think it depends, because here's the other scenario for that. What if Jacksonville, when no one has talked about this, what if they take Kayvon Thibodeau? And so, now you're like, oh, who's going to get – and now that's when the chaos starts, right? Because we've seen that before where the Raiders started the chaos a few years ago when they took Cleveland Farrell. It's like, well, who the hell expected him, and now it's chaos. Like, oh, well, we got to get this guy because who would have seen that coming, right?
Right.
So I think there's a couple of early scenarios. Let's say the Jags take Kayvon, the Lions take someone not named Malik Willis, and Houston's right there.
Kyle Hamilton. They could use a safety in Detroit.
They could use a safety in Detroit. They could take Hutchinson. So there's a lot of I think Jacksonville can really, start the run, so to speak, with whoever they decide to take at pick 1.
Wow, that would be fun. That's why I'm excited. I think that people are actually going to be tuned into this first round. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's going to be a bunch of stupid glitz and glamour and fountains and a bunch of ridiculous Vegas crap. But at the same time, it's just going to come down to.
There'll be a surprise.
It's more for me. It's more fun that there's not this guy's going. Yeah. There's not a Joe Burrow going or a guy going number 1 or. Even the year, we had 3 or 4 quarterbacks, and which quarterback will go first? It's what position will go first? What is someone? I don't see anyone making a move to pick first. You know what I mean? I don't see that kind of a thing going on, but I'm just so curious to see what they do at 1, just to see which way you go. Because I think you're right, Emery. It's going to shape the next 9 picks.
All right. So let me ask you about a few players. And this one is because this is the name I remember most. Oh, I'm going to ask you about my Montana State guys too. But I want to know about Sauce Gardner. Where does Sauce end up? Because you see him everywhere. He's everywhere.
There's a litany of places he can go.
Oh, okay.
I could potentially, you could make a case for him going to Detroit. You can make a case for him going to the Jets. You can make a case for him going to the Giants. And I think that's where his floor is pick 5. I think if the Jets don't take him, the Giants will. And I think that's where he could potentially go. If not, then Seattle will be a spot, for him. Seattle needs corners, so I can see that for Sauce Gardner.
Mm-hmm. Oh, Emery, to your mouth, to the football god's ears, that would be great. Lisa and Kate, I'm going to have you guys ask about specific players that you want to, but I am going to talk to you. Emery, I warned you I was going to do this. My alma mater is Montana State University, and it is not very often that Montana State football gets any love or any credit for much. But they did go to their national championship this year. They got their asses handed to them by North Dakota State, which we all knew would happen, but that's okay. But Troy Anderson, linebacker out of Montana State, is getting quite a bit of buzz. And I mean like 2nd and 3rd round buzz. I'm not talking 1st round buzz here in any way, shape, or form. But I have to say that we Montanans are awful excited to see how much love that he's been getting. Where do you think he ends up going in round wise? Obviously team, it just depends, but
I'm a big fan of Troy Anderson, man. And it's fascinating because I think if he's the closest thing to Brian Urlacher that we've seen since Brian Urlacher. Now Urlacher is about maybe 2.5 inches taller. Right. But it's the same level of athleticism. And the funny part is when you think about the position, a linebacker, and what you want these guys to do, he's the type of guy that fits the mold. He can cover, he can blitz, he can run. He's exactly what you want. And, down at the Senior Bowl, you saw him showcase that range that he had and was able to hold his own against the Power 5 and Group of 5, up talent. I mean, they did that all season. They should have beaten Wyoming early in the year. They did beat Wyoming earlier in the year. I'm sorry. So this is a guy that matches up physically, athletically, and he is totally ready to go. So if I'm Philly and I need a linebacker, which they do, why not gamble on the guy that gives you athletic upside? I think with the way he performed at the combine, and we know a lot of people put a lot of stock in the combine, with him running the fastest time and him running and testing and jumping like he did, he may be the surprise 1st round pick. There's always one,
I'll have a heart attack.
There's someone that's going to take him because of what he checks off these boxes athletically and what he did out there on the field during his career. I mean, he was a running back, he's a quarterback and linebacker. So I think 2nd round, max.
Yeah.
With flirting with the 1st round, and especially when you look at who has 2 picks. Green Bay could be in. I know people love Barnes, the inside backer, and they signed Devondre Campbell. But man, why not stack Anderson next to Campbell? And now you have the length and the athleticism for days. Or if you're Kansas City, you need another impact player, right? Bam. There you go. You need a receiver and you need someone else that can impact your defense, whether it's a pass rusher, linebacker, or corner. So I can see someone talking themselves into Troy Anderson maybe late in the first, but definitely he's going in the second round.
Proud. We don't get to say things like that very often, so we get excited about it for sure. Lisa, what about you? What player do you have your eye on, or do you want to ask Emery where he thinks they'll end up or land round-wise?
Well, I'm trying to figure out, Emery, where Ahmad Gardner came in and how did he vault Derek Stingley Jr. from LSU? I had Stingley. I still have him away. I have him ahead of Gardner going within the top 5. But all of a sudden, it just seems we're hearing Ahmad Gardner. Did something happen with Stingley that I'm missing? I mean, he had an outstanding first year.
Gardner has a better nickname.
I mean, do you see Stingley better than Gardner, or am I missing something? I mean, I have him ahead of him.
Actually, I have the same grade for Stingley and Gardner, and you're right. But I feel like what happened with Stingley happens a lot. It's happening with Kayvon Thibodeau. It's prospect fatigue. Think about it. We talked all last year was, whoever wins the first pick, they get the rights to Kayvon Thibodeau. And you see Derek Stingley make an interception. Oh, man, he should be able to go to the pros now as a freshman. That's how great he is. And so now it's time for these guys to go pro, and people try to talk about him, right? So they find somebody else to talk about. But you're right. That's why if you're the Jets, the Giants or the Seahawks, you're in the catbird seat. You're fine with whoever goes, because you get the next guy. Gardner is really good, but man, when you think about someone that has the ball skills, has the awareness, the instincts, they were at least flirting with putting him on offense at LSU, before. So not just leave him completely on defense. That's how good this dude is. And now that and I think part of why he started to, fall a little bit because he was injured. And so now since he, came back, checked those boxes medically, he ran his 40, so he doesn't have the Liz Frank issue. You hope that stays the case. So I think we'll see him now not get out of the top 10. Him, having an injury hanging over his head and really didn't play a lot this year, kind of is what allowed those guys to really jump up in front of him. But you're right, that dude there is just as good, if not a little bit better than Sauce Gardner.
It's good to know.
I agree.
Good to know. Kate, what about you?
Well, I was going to ask about David Ojabo out of Michigan. He got hurt in the offseason, and that seems to be hurting his draft status. In general, how much does that weigh into when you're looking at your boards? Is it, if it's a type of injury that he's going to bounce back and he's going to be fine by the time the season gets here. But if you're drafting, is it enough to just look at what he did and discount that injury, or how much weight does an injury like that do? This is a guy that I thought would go, among the top edge rushers, and I don't know that he goes before the third round because just with the way they're talking about the injury and everything. So I just wondered what your thoughts were on injuries hurting their draft status.
That's a great question, because I feel like, in the media and fans, we tend to, treat everybody like Adrian Peterson, right? It's like, man, I wish I had his ACL recovery. I tore my ACL and I never was the same. I tore it twice. And so to see him tear his ACL late and come back and rush for 2,000 yards, everybody's like, oh, that's cool. ACLs are now the new ankle sprains. Like, no, man, like that's still a significant need. So I would be hesitant to take a Jameson Williams in the first round. Philly fans thought I was crazy when I said when they had 3 first-round picks. I'm like, I would go defense all 3 picks. Or if I'm gonna go receiver with one of those 3 first-round picks, it would be George Pickens out of Georgia, because right now you have 3 guys built the same way. Everybody's built, lean and fast. Get someone different. Get a different body type. Plus, you don't know how explosive Jameson Williams will be coming off the injury. Everyone responds differently. I tell people all the time, as good as DeMarco Murray was, in the NFL and at Oklahoma, go back and watch his high school tape. That was pre-knee injury. That dude was ridiculous. And so, yeah, we saw a good player, but man, he wasn't the same. Same with Willis McGahee. Same with Frank Gore.
Yeah.
They were different. And so everyone's body responds differently. And so I would be hesitant to your original point to spend a first round pick unless I had multiple and one was late. So I have a mock draft coming out on CBSSports.com tomorrow. So I'm kind of teasing a little bit of what I did with one of the teams that has 2 first round picks. Because of that reason, it's about luxury.
Right.
Let's say if you're a team that has an immediate need, you don't have. Let's say if the Giants were to take Jameson Williams at 7, like you don't have that luxury of patience with this dude. Like you have to win now. Or if you're Carolina taking someone that he's going to be fine, we're going to redshirt him this year and let him nurse himself back to injury. Like, now you don't have time, bro. You need dudes that can play and save your job right now. So there's a few teams that don't have that luxury, and there's a few that do. But I will always be hesitant to really, unless it's something that doesn't affect the player. Let's say if it's a running back coming off of a broken ankle, okay, I'll still take the pick because that's an ankle. But when you talk about ligaments and Achilles, it's tough.
It's tough.
Yeah.
And
can I ask one more, or are we running out of time?
We're running out of time, and we actually have a question from our chat.
Oh.
Camden has a question. Any thoughts on Jordan Davis?
Big dude, wants to be a broadcaster. I asked him that question at the combine. He said, I want to do what you're doing. And he said, I have the frame for it. I have the presence. I'm like, you know what, man? You're all right. You definitely have that. But I think he's really good. I like the fact that I brought up the Dexter Lawrence comparison. Just because you were asked to do something doesn't mean you can't do something. And the fact that he has athleticism and quickness, thin ankles, he's able to you can see the potential for him being a quick one-gap penetrator, despite not him doing so at Georgia. And we saw glimpses of that in the title game. I want to say it was the first or second series where he got pressure and caused that fumble. Shows you he can do it, just wasn't asked to do it. If you're projecting with, say, Travon Walker, why can't you project with Jordan Davis?
Mm-hmm.
Well, he ran like a 4.8 40, didn't he?
Yeah,
that boy's pushing 350 pounds, and he was.
Yeah, he's a big boy.
He's pretty fast.
He's a big boy.
He is pretty fast for that size.
So yeah,
we got some big guys.
Yeah.
For sure. All right. Well, we have gone over time. I promised Emery just 30 minutes, so I appreciate you sticking out with us just a little bit more. We appreciate it. Everyone, I want you to follow Emery on Twitter. It is at FBallGamePlan. He is known as the Czar of the Playbook. You can find him all over CBS Sports. Every time you turn around, there's Emery, and I love it. And he has been a friend of our show and a friend of ours for years now, so we appreciate your time so much, Emery. So you told me that during the draft, they're going to have you in studio. Are you going to be doing play-by-play? What are you doing?
We're going to be in studio. This time I'll be down in the main studio, which is in Fort Lauderdale. So we'll be breaking down picks and talking about the picks and stuff like that, because CBS doesn't have the broadcast rights. So we can't do live play, like as ESPN and NFL Network does. But we'll be breaking down picks all over CBS Sports HQ. So I'm excited about that. I'll be doing all 3 days.
Nice.
And, I forgot. I do have a draft guide. Over 1,000 individuals prospect scouting reports, the largest draft guide in draft guide history. And you can find that at footballgameplan.com/2022 draft guide. So we all know the rosters are transient during preseason, during training camp, during the season. Guarantee if your team signs someone, even as an undrafted free agent, you're like, well, who the hell is that? He's going to be in that draft guide.
He's going to be in that guide.
That's awesome. Report on it.
Well, we will definitely. Yeah, we will. We'll be posting that on our social media account, so you'll be able to find it easily. So you can go get the draft guide from Emery. Emery, thank you so much for joining us. I hope we have you back later in the summer after this draft, and we can chat about all these players that showed up. So thank you so much. Have a great draft weekend.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks, buddy.
Bye.
Oh, love him. One of my
I love
absolute
him.
favorites. Absolutely favorites. All right, ladies. Well, thanks for hanging out. We had a great show. The draft. One more week. It's gonna be good.
Keep an eye on Jelani Woods, tight end out of Virginia.
Jelani Woods, tight ends.
He's my favorite of the tight ends. Nobody's talking about tight ends. He's my favorite tight end.
3 and 4. I think 3 and 4 for tight ends. I don't. Yeah. I mean, I think it's going to happen in round 3 and 4. Like Kate said earlier, I think when one goes, you're going to start seeing like a boop, 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 boop a little bit.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep, I agree. Yep. I absolutely agree. Yeah, and the other thing we're not hearing about is running backs.
Right.
I know, right?
Yeah. Everyone's all about the lines this year, and actually,
and there's some big dudes. It's going to be interesting.
You know, I think you touched on it earlier, or maybe Emery did. It's a 17-game season. And injuries last year were insane, and you need to protect your quarterback. You need to get bigger guys in the trenches. And so I think offensive and defensive linemen are going to have a very prominent spot in this draft as the teams are like, you know what, we need next man up. When someone gets injured, we need the next guy to be able to fill that spot and to do some protection and to, centers and tackles and all that kind of stuff. So I think we're going to see a difference in the way players are drafted.
Yeah,
because of a 17-game season.
I do. I agree. It is. I think we're going to see an influx. I think the top 10 are going to be line. I do.
Yeah.
Well, and I think it's helpful that there's not that superstar stud quarterback this year.
I think so.
So that teams can actually draft for need, and it'll be a lot less inflated. Or I think a lot of players that went early in prior years went because they were super special, and then there was a scarcity of talent at that position. Whereas this year, I think it'll be much more. I think the picks will make a lot of sense to fans. I don't think there's going to be a lot of we took who for what?
Yeah, right.
It'll be like we needed one of those. Thank you. Maybe not the who, but at least we needed someone in that position. Thank you for getting us someone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I think Emery is 100% right that those teams in the first round are going to stay right where they are and just fill the coffers, kids. Just fill it up. Just take as many as you can.
Where is Seattle at?
9.
Where's
9?
If you guys could get Stingley, that dude is a stud cornerback. I'm telling you.
I talked to Seahawks fans. I've talked to lots of like the Seahawks, like talking heads, like the guys who really are into this, and they have a list of like 7 players that they'll be thrilled if they get any of them. And I think that's just how this draft is this year. I just really think that's the way it is. So for sure.
All right, guys.
All right, everyone. We'll be back again next Tuesday right here on Twitter and on YouTube, 8 p.m. Eastern time to wrap up our draft talk. All right, everyone. Have a good night. Bye-bye.